So yeah, Suna and Martin, they called me and they said, "Hey, Amir, can you come and talk a little bit about manufacturing and what you learned?" And I was like, "Shit, what did I learn?" So I was starting to look through the pictures I've taken throughout the process of, oops. So I was starting to look through the pictures that I was taking throughout the process of taking Flick through production, and I actually started to get amazed about how much I've learned, but I haven't noticed. So I'm not going to give you a presentation. I'm going to give you a story about our process throughout this industrialization of Flick. So what you first think is, how is this going to go? And this is how you hope it goes. You basically start off with some prototypes, maybe approach Martin, you create some prototypes, and then you approach Janne from WSI, you make some functional prototypes, and then you end up with what's on the right there. Next, what do? You launch a campaign, you raise money so you can afford putting it into production. You fly down to China or Malaysia or whatever it is, see the factory, meet some nice people, check out how they make the tools and how they're going to make your product, and then boom, you're shipping. Wouldn't that be awesome? You just unload everything into the boxes in PostNord in Årsta, and you're in retail in Designtorget. Yeah, that would have been awesome, except this is how it actually goes. So here's the prototype that you had, and now you're going to put it into production, right? So you get the first samples in the factory, you're happy. You get them in the right color because you want it in black instead of green. You take a look at some color chips for your silicone. They look pretty awesome. You get the first samples, they look pretty good. This was the regulation stuff, how it's supposed to look. And then you start assembling your first prototypes. You party, because it was Chinese New Year back then. And then shit gets real. That's when you start noticing that they had, the PCBs had white via, what do you call it? The via holes were white on the back, which didn't look good. Wasn't how it's supposed to be. This is how the regulation looked when we actually printed it. This was how it was supposed to look. Didn't look that nice. And then we noticed that our battery started popping out for no reason at all. So we had to put a sponge. So we just put a sponge there and started testing it. And then we noticed, oh, now we have to redo this again. So you start redoing it. This is a sort of like a plastic that's holding our button in place. And I swear to God, we changed this 7 times. What is that? Is that a hangout? I think that's hangout. Thank God it wasn't my phone.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
Let's get back to your thing.
That would be good.
That was much.
I hope this doesn't go from my time. Or should I rush it up? I'll try to rush it up.
No.
By the way, I really tried to keep this as a story so it's not like a presentation so that you guys can get the feeling of what the hell I was going through. And sorry for the curse words. Anyway, we started noticing that our battery contact was melting the plastics. And that was a hell because we didn't know how are we going to assemble this because it's melting the plastics and it's ruining the entire thing. So we had to go back to the drawing board. And it looked like this. So we had to put everything down. So this is like 90% of my time when I'm putting something in production, putting our second product into production right now, and this is 90% of what I put my time on. Just planning what do we need to do, when does it need to get done for us to be able to ship in time. And this is how strict the timelines could be when you're down there and working with a factory. I swear to God, they actually put that they were working until 11 at night for testing so that we could, the day after, start getting our second sample so that I could get it in time before I was going to fly back. So that's how much you rush. And then you fly back and you start over again. So this was when we were receiving our first silicone samples, and I was looking at this and I was like, this does not look good. Why is it sticking out? It should look like this, like a perfect circle. And then you go back to the factory and you're saying, so why doesn't this look like a perfect circle? And they're like, so what are your limits? And I'm like, what do you mean, what are my limits? It's supposed to be a circle, right? Just like it was in the design. But that's the difference of an actual design and when you're putting it into production. How are you making it? How are you supposed to make it? And what are your limits? And it was sticking out around the sides, and you could see that when you put it on the surface, it was sticking up. And I was like, that's not okay. We got to do something about this. And then we started receiving our battery contacts, the new ones, the old ones, the newer ones. And then we were back on the drawing board again. And then we had started getting really big issues with mainly the click feeling. And I was like, how difficult can it be to make a product this small? It's supposed to be easy. Right? When you look at it, it doesn't feel like it's supposed to be that difficult. And then we noticed that the whiteboard wasn't big enough, so we moved to a bigger board. Anyway, finally we started getting the final things up, started looking beautiful, and then we started noticing the quality issues. So we had a coin slot, so you could put in a coin to open it and get the battery out. And we started noticing, wow, this plastic doesn't work. Because the first time you try to get it out, it actually gets ruined. And we actually removed the coin slot because we found out that, hey, well, we have a sticky backside where you put it up on a wall. Why not just use the sticky backside to turn it? And it was a great idea. We implemented, we redid the tooling, and then we came to the production line, and they said, so how are we going to close it in the production line? And I was like, okay. Let's use the sticky backside to close it. And then we put the actual sticky backside on. And they were like, okay, so we're just going to use it with our hands? Or? And I swear to God, I went to the hardware store and I was looking for something, and I found a broken umbrella. I took the handle off, and I was like, so for this run, try it out with this one, and we'll see if it works. That was a year ago, and they're still using this, which is actually pretty cool, because the tool that they made for this didn't work that well, and it broke. So this one is still used because it has the little features for your fingers as well, so it's working pretty good. Please don't tell anyone about this. And then you get to the shipping part. You're like, okay, so you Google some pictures. You're like, okay, this is what people use. And then you get the actual sample, and then you ship it, and it gets like this. This is actually my best friend. He lives in Iceland, so he sent me this photo after I sent from our beta shipments, and this is how it looked when it got there. So I was like, okay, so this doesn't really work. We had to make another box for this, and we were just about to ship, so we had to stop everything. And these are the things that you don't think about, which Janne and Martin were talking about. So yeah, just enjoy the ride. Sooner or later, you'll get there, and everyone will get happy, I guess. This is actually part of what Martin was talking about and Janne was talking about. It's all about relationship building. And what I believe in is everyone who's working on our product, I want them to feel a part of the team. And funny thing was, when we handed out all these t-shirts to our team, this is our main team in Malaysia, they were like, we've never gotten t-shirts from any of our customers. And I was like, well, you guys are part of the team. That's why. So yeah, 5 things to keep in mind, which was basically the main topic of what I was going to talk about. Throughout this process, you'll probably believe that you need to think ahead. You need to risk mitigate and find out what are the high risk, what are the medium risk, what are the low risks, and have plan A, B, C, D, anything you can think of. Have a backup plan for everything. And again, as they were talking about before me, choose the right partner. You need to make sure that they have the right certification so that your retailers don't start complaining about, yeah, well, we don't really trust you because you don't have the right certifications in place. So that they really believe in your product. You don't want to be put aside and get delayed in shipping your product because they didn't want to put you on the line. Be legal. I didn't know how to write this, but by that I mean make sure you're following all the right regulations. We had an issue just recently where we hadn't registered for some kind of waste management thing in Germany. And this became a big deal because it stopped our shipments. We couldn't ship through. We were using a shipment solution where we were shipping through Germany, and we had to stop it because Germany said, yeah, well, you need to have this. So we had to reroute all our shipments, and that takes time. Reliable. Make sure you do all the necessary testings. I remember when Martin was telling me when they were making the transparent speaker, when they were doing the drop tests, that you had to thicken the glass because it wasn't thick enough. And these are things that you don't really think about. Well, what happens if it drops? What happens if it gets soaked? You need to do IP testing to say, well, if it gets soaked, that's outside of our space, so to speak. So yeah, you need to make sure you know exactly how to test your product. And finally, think about the packaging. Not only about your packaging, but your cartons which you're going to ship into, because all of these will be cost related later. If you don't make sure that your packaging can fit inside the carton that you chose, yeah, then you're shipping a lot of air. So think about everything, think ahead, and try to have backup plans for everything. I think that was enough from me. Any questions? Question?
Yeah.
What kind of volumes are we talking about?
Repeat the question.
So she asked what kind of volumes we're talking about. So we don't really talk about the volumes, but I can say after our crowdfunding campaign ended, it was somewhere in the region of mid 6 figures volume pieces. Yeah, so basically everything that was just ordered during 2 months during our crowdfunding campaign. So that was a year ago. So that was what we had to make sure that we produce and we were able to ship. And that was, it was 50,000 units, fuck it. It was 50,000 units, and it was for 110 countries. So we had to basically make sure that it can not only be produced, but it has to be shipped to 110 countries. Any other questions?
What was the delay between the first deadline promise to the customers and to the backers until the shipment?
Do we have any backers in here? Okay, great. Then I can be honest. No, so yeah, we had a lot of issues that were coming up. We had our battery contact was one of the first ones, the melting problem. So we realized that we had to fix it, and once we fixed it, we realized that the battery contact wasn't good enough, so we had to redesign the whole thing. And then you're talking about tooling. First you need to redesign it, make sure it works, and then you need to create a new tooling, and that takes 4 to 6 weeks, and you hope it's going to be good. You don't need to do any modifications. That was the first one, and then there were a lot of other problems that just came up. And that was a lot due to that we hadn't initially done enough testing, so to speak.
So what was the timeline?
We were supposed to ship in March, April, and I think we were about 5 to 6 months delayed from that date.
What did you say to your customers?
We were communicating. We were communicating to our best, basically just saying, telling the truth. And that was, by some, it wasn't appreciated because their product was delayed. I mean, some actually ordered the product on 17th of November when we launched the campaign, and they were expecting it by 24th of December, so by Christmas. But we were like, yeah, that's not going to happen. This isn't a web shop. But a lot of people were appreciating that we were honest, and we were saying out that, hey, we're having these issues, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're trying to fix it. So a lot of people were appreciating it. Last question. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.